I've been stealing jewelry off corpses for years. Grandma'll be a cinch. Let me go back. The phone call of the dead always comes between midnight and 1 a.m. Before midnight, the call could be anyone for any reason. After 1 a.m., it's a wrong number dialed in Spain. But if the call comes in between midnight and 1 a.m., the news is a houseboat on the river Styx, and no mistake, Charlie. When I get back to my apartment from the Viper room, my voicemail says 12:48. It's Donald's voice. Hey ho, Mac, father this end. We're at the Philadelphia house. Call us ASAP. Hope everything A-okay your end, 10-4. My father never says goodbye. He thinks if he says things like A-okay and 10-4, it's a superstition. He thinks if he talks like that, if he says goodbye, he'll die soon in a fiery plane crash. I look at the clock near the bed, 4:36 a.m. If it's 4:30 in Los Angeles, that means it's 7:30 in America. They'll be up now at the Philadelphia house, which is unfortunate because it means my call will not wake them. I pour a drink, vodka, as is morning, and I dial. Donald picks up. It's Nettie, he says. She died last night at Norton Place. We're driving down. Can you get a flight to Pittsburgh? Do you need anything? Yes. Yes, I say, I can get a flight out, and no, I don't need anything. Anything in our family needs money. All right then, says Donald, over and out. We hang up. She's dead. My grandmother, Nettie James, is dead. Well, this is my moment. My destiny has called me. I pour another vodka, and I rifle through a box in the closet to find the cracked black and white photograph that I know is there. This goes back with me. I look at the figure passed out on the bed. Someone in black named David or Charlotte. That won't go back with me. I should call and see if I can get a flight at 9, but first I check my wallet. The 20 and 3 ones, the bank account is overdrawn, all my plastic is strictly dead zone. I need money for a plane ticket and a rental car and 3 days in the worst place on earth. I'll have to go to work. The LA Times is delivered early, so I go to the door and I head straight for Section D. Rosalind Marquardt, 83, Tarzana. No. Elizabeth Quilty, 69, West Hollywood. Nope. Miriam Cass, 86, Beverly Hills. Miriam Cass, survived by husband Maurice. So I'll catch a later flight. By 9 o'clock, I'm at the funeral home on Sunset Boulevard. My bags are in the back of the taxi I've asked to wait. I dawdle until a crowd has formed, a field of blue hair and blue stoles. Maurice must be the old blind guy in the 1964 Savile Row suit. I pay my respects to Maurice, my condolences. How I met Mimi, yes, on that trip to Ceylon, exactly. How Mimi spoke of you, yes, while you were sick in the stateroom. I'll just say goodbye. And there I am in line, 2 people away from score, open casket. I inhale, swallow. Somehow in this business, it's always the first time. I close my eyes and I bite my lips and the tears well up. I bent over to kiss Miriam goodbye, noting that she is absolutely encrusted. 2 pecks, one on each side of the cheek in the continental manner. And when I pull back, I have my mouth firmly closed in a supreme effort to not lose control of my emotions. Once I'm in the cab, I open my mouth and I take out the earrings. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Rubies. My fence will give you $3,000 for them, which is enough for an open-end return ticket, a good rental car, and plenty of scratch till I get mine from Nettie James. 4 hours later, on the plane over the tundra, a glass of champagne stapled to my palm. Thomas Wolfe once wrote, "You can't go home again." Thomas Wolfe was a putz. Of course you can go home again. They make you go home all the time, endlessly. But I'm going to get something from this trip. High over Ohio, I close my eyes and I imagine I'm on the Charlie Rose show. The dark background, the Persian carpet, the good wood. Jodie Foster has just left and Gordy Dahl is in the wings. Charlie turns his cleft to me. Well, how did you get your start in, well, I guess we'd have to call it, heck, corpse robbing, right? Right, you are, Charlie, you big, dumb, handsome guy they make read books. Well, it was like this. I had just moved to Stockbridge, from Stockbridge to LA, and I was broke, not acting. A friend of mine died, and I hadn't been to a viewing in a long time, but they put me in charge of the viewing, and his wrist was so small, the watch wouldn't fit. So I put it in my purse for later. I found it 3 days after the funeral, and I was going to give it back, but it was a Rolex and a tough week, and besides, give it back to whom? So I rationalized keeping it and selling it and then doing it again, and it's kept me in high five figures for 8 years now. Never caught. Knock on cherry wood or knotty pine. But gosh, he says, is there anything you won't steal? Sure. There are limits. A wedding ring, a friendship ring, a Dakota ring, there are limits. Oh, well, gosh, he says, why do you do it? What do you want? Want? The touch of something that has touched another. Bring on Gore Vidal, pal. Ask what he wants. At Pittsburgh, I rent a BMW. And an hour out of the airport, past steel mills, past strip mines, past the same farm for 50 miles, I arrive over the river and through the woods to grandmother's funeral. Inside the funeral parlor, the first viewing has begun. My parents, Donald and Dorothy, stand at the first position near the head of the casket, receiving the dukes and barons of the town. In the far corner sits my mother's sister, Aunt Tita, pleasant, sweet, smiling, an idiot. At the rear near the exit is her son Gerald and my brother, St. David the Perfect. It's gotten out that Nettie liked white poinsettias, and it looks like we're burying her on the set of Dr. Zhivago. I glance beneath the snowy plant and I see one lone figure. It's Josephine. Josephine was my grandmother's housekeeper at Norton Place. She was my grandmother's H.R. Haldeman. I waved. You recognize me, Josephine? She does. You remember me, Josephine? Uh-huh. You're the bipolar, bisexual drug addict. Donald and Dorothy give an imperceptible glance in my direction. It's actually a glare. Would look like a glare to anyone else, but to a James it's a glare, kind of how like dogs can hear certain sounds. My brother David is sidled up to me. I can smell the Pepto-Bismol in his breath. After the viewing, Mother and Father would like to have a talk with us. And then he slips back to his post from some flowers from some place called the First Church of the Charismatic Assumption. I can sense tension in the room. They're all acting as if someone has died. I mean, Nettie James was 103 years old. This funeral has been in rehearsal so long it's had replacement casts. But the relaxed jocularity one normally associates with a very rich, very old, very demanding harridan is entirely absent. I mouth to Josephine, "What's going on?" She says, "There's a new will." Moments later, we're in the spare viewing room where my father Donald is interrogating a young local attorney by the name of Danny Spar about how it could have happened. $5.2 million given to the First Church of the Charismatic Assumption. The Norton House and the Lake Cottage given to Charismatic Alternative Families, Inc. My wife's mother gave the entire family fortune to a bunch of crazed, holy roller devil worshippers. Danny Spar shrugs. I told you to disconnect her cable TV. Well, the will has been read, the money is gone. That they will have to learn to live with. But I have not come for money, I've come for something else. Let me go back. In the cracked black and white photograph I brought with me from LA, there's a beautifully coiffed woman in her 60s holding the hand of an equally beautifully coiffed 5-year-old girl with red eyes from crying. You can't see the red in the black and white photograph, but you can see the tears. It's 1969 and I am not going to get my hair done. I am crying in the big blue Packard, and my grandmother has taken me into the local department store, the Hub, to calm me down. As we enter, hundreds of shop clerks rush to greet us, bending, groveling, rubbing their hands. There's Mrs. Borton-Kirker from the shoe department, Miss Carver from the dress department, Morton Linkoff from jewelry. They give her presents. Something especially important seems to come from Morton Linkoff, something wrapped in a box. Nettie says to me, see, if you're nice to people, they give you things. I'll tell you what, you be a good girl when you get your hair done, and when we get back to Norton Place, I'll give you what's in this box. And she opens it. Inside is the most beautiful tear-shaped ring I have ever seen. Seems to glow with every jewel in the planet. I've never seen such colors, such facets, such light. I will do anything to get this ring. So I am a good girl, and I do calm down, and I get my hair done, and when we get back to Norton Place, I say, as Josephine's about ready to take our photo, so where's my present? And my grandmother says, oh, you can't believe everything I say. You can't get everything you want. And the ring goes on her finger. The family has returned to the parlor where the second viewing has begun. There's a crowd around the casket, so I decide to go on a coffee break, and I see this figure walking through the forest. It's as if she lives at the funeral home. She has her own chair. Her name is Margaret Mary Walsh, and she remembers me since I was like, I don't know, an embryo, sperm with eyelashes. We trade inane nonsense for a while, and suddenly she remembers the missing piece in my puzzle. And how is that husband and family? Imperceptibly, I feel David flinch, Tita wince, Donald and Dorothy blush. But I'm fine. I say, I'm not married anymore. My husband never fixed the kitchen door. This seems to satisfy her. The crowd around the coffin has gone on a coffee break, so I make a beeline for the casket and I peer in at my grandmother. Someone behind me says, she looks good. I nod. She looks like Stalin. Her hands are folded, one over the other. She always wore the dinner ring on her right hand, and that's the hand I can't see. I itch to pick it up and flip it over. Just looking. How am I going to find out if she's wearing that ring? Suddenly, Donald is at my side. Mac, we have a problem. Nettie's new will specified that she should, that we have to take the pieces off of her and keep them at home. She wants to be buried in her jewelry, but the funeral home has a policy that we have to do the physical removal from her body and keep the pieces at home overnight. Now, your mother is in no condition to do it, nor am I, nor David. He can't touch dead people. David is a surgeon, okay? We'd like you to do it, Mac. Oh, I couldn't. Mac, we didn't stop you when you should have stayed in the hospital in Stockbridge. And we didn't stop you when you changed your first name from Jane to McTeague. Now, this is a family service we are requesting, one that we expect to be performed unless you feel that you are incapable. All right. I've been stealing jewelry off corpses for years. Grandma be a cinch. I go to my grandmother, take off her rings. I try to make it all look like it takes more time than it does, and then I very deftly flip her left hand off her right. The finger is bare. The ring isn't there. I pat her down like a cop at the airport. Nothing. It's not there. In a daze, I give all the pieces to Donald, and then I get in my rented BMW and I drive to a place called the Green Mill, where I get drunk with a feed salesman named Dwayne, who can't get his wedding ring off fast enough. An action which makes me so sad and depressed, I go back to Norton Place very alone. In the pink bedroom of my grandmother's house, and the pink bed that's been mine since I was a child. I dream of Jack in the night. Jack in our house in Stockbridge, holding hands with Paul and Laney at his side. Why can't you love the littlest things, he says. The things you can hold in your hand. What do you want from this world? There are so many things you can't get or hold on to, like color and facets and light. And then, in the dream, he takes my hand and he puts 3 rings on my fingers. Is this why you tried to kill yourself, he says? Yes, I say. I left our house, and I went into the garage, and I sat in the car on that cold, cold night, and I turned on the ignition. I tried. Didn't work out the way I planned. The next morning, I called the airline to try to get the soonest possible flight back to LA. Outside the funeral home, my bags are packed in the rented BMW, and inside the funeral parlor, we are in position for the 3rd and final viewing. When, through the crowd of snowy plants, I see Josephine and Margaret Mary Walsh in a deep conversation with this tiny bald man. They're whispering together. And then he glances in my direction and he approaches. It's Morton Linkoff. Morton Linkoff from the Hub. He's ancient now, like Yoda. And he says to me, and what are the chances? How is that husband of yours and those 2 kids? My words come out as ever. I'm not married anymore. My husband never fixed the kitchen door. I try to walk away, but Morton Linkoff is persistent. You know, I remember your grandmother bringing you into the department store the day you were going to get your first hair done. She had come in to pick up the dinner ring that your grandfather had ordered, the one she's wearing right now. I am Morton Linkoff's oxygen. My face is so close to his. You mean the tear-shaped dinner ring? Yes, he beams. It was from beautiful work from a talented wholesaler I had at Hackensack. Came to town twice, 3 times a year. Your grandmother, she had sent it in to be cleaned, but she wanted to be buried with it. I just give it back to Mr. Funeral. Who are we to argue with the dead? It's there. It's there. And why shouldn't I take it? It was by rights. It was by rights mine, and I need. The service is about to begin. The family is to pay its respects one by one. And as they start to do so, I duck into the powder room so that when I return, I'll be the last one. It's an affront to protocol, of course, but it's a strategy that's worked for me a billion times. It'll work for me again. Out of the restroom, I sustain the glares, but I'm resolute. No one dares stop the emotional granddaughter from her final embrace. I approach my grandmother, my mother's mother, the source of my being, all cold and dusted, pink and blue. And I look down. The ring is there. The eagle has landed. I grip the side of the casket. I lean my face to hers. I place my hand on her hand. And the ring is harder to pull off than I had hoped. It's as if her finger has swollen. I pull, nothing. I twist, nothing. I don't want to break her fingers. It's an occupational hazard, and I don't want my grandmother to be my first snapper. But then, I look at my grandmother, and her eyes are open and watching me. Grandma? Hello, Jane, trying to steal my ring? Maybe. Sweet Janie, why have you been lying to all my friends? Tell me, where is your husband and my 2 great-grandchildren? She has my hands in a grip so tight, I think my fingers will break. Stop lying, Janie. Tell me the truth. Where's that husband of yours and my 2 great-grandchildren? She has my wrist and now my elbow, and she's pulling me down deep into the coffin. Tell the truth, Janie. Where's that husband of yours and my 2 great-grandchildren? I'm running a cold sweat. I look around the room for my family, and there's nobody in the room. Where's my family? Where's my family? Where is my family? My husband never fixed the kitchen door, and after I fell asleep in the car, because the kitchen door had never been fixed, the lock had opened and the door had opened, and all the air from the garage had left the garage and come into the house and into the bedrooms, and it had killed my husband, my son, my daughter, my littlest things, while I slept. Let me go back. Let me go back. Let me go back! And the ring comes off. Someone taps my shoulder. They're about to close the casket. They place my grandmother's coffin deep into the ground next to my grandfather's old headstone. The earth begins to hit the top of the casing with a sound that is unmistakably it. I listen to the minister talk about the gift of the homemaker, the ring clasped tight in my hand. I did not die the day I tried to kill myself. They buried my husband and my son and my daughter before I woke up. This ring is cold to the touch. It is not what I want or need. At long last, the minister is finished. My mother steps forward and throws in a clump of dirt, and then Tita and Donald and Gerald and David, and finally there's me. I go to the hole cut out of the planet. I gather the dirt, and I let it fall. The clump of a clod of earth, the sprinkle of grain and rock, the rain of dust, and the silver note as it bounces off the lid and disappears deep into the soil forever. In Stockbridge, Massachusetts, where I lived for years, there is a place where my other family is buried. I've not yet visited them, but I know the way there. In the darkness, I pray for the touch of a hand that has known my touch too. The call of the dead is not strange in the night. No one can steal anything from my family ever again. Tears freeze in the cold, and when they hit the stone, they break into a shattering of color and facets and light. I gather them close to me, and I am warm, like a thief in